Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to another Planet FPL Clash of the Correspondents, where we're looking forward to a London derby this coming Sunday in game week 14. Firstly, let me introduce you to our West Ham United correspondent, Chris Stone. How are you, Chris?
Yep, I'm good. Thanks, James. Hope you're doing well as well.
Yeah, well, thank you, mate. And our Crystal Palace correspondents here, it's Ruaidhri McLaughlin-Dowd. How are you, Rory?
Bang average, James.
Bang average.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's FPL season.
Yeah.
I think the three of us could probably just have an hour chat about injuries, but I don't want to do that. First, interesting question for you, Chris. Is there any rivalry in this fixture?
There is sort of, but it's not really like it's not like a horrible rivalry. It just seems to be Palace are a bit of one of those teams we always seem to struggle to get results against. I've got a couple of sort of Palace mates and things, so there's obviously personal rivalry there, and they always seem to get one over on us in some shape or form. So, but I don't think it's not like it's not like a hate rivalry, not in my opinion anyway.
No, for you, Rory.
Not really. I do remember the playoff finals. I'm sure you do, Chris. But it was quite a long time ago now. It's a one-off
Neil
game as well.
Shipley.
Yeah, his shin.
Yeah.
But
it's funny because
I've got to be honest. I think I shot a goal when that went in, Rory.
Listened to a West Ham podcast the other day, and they had Andy Johnson on, so they were talking about the playoff final. So thanks for another reminder.
Yeah.
Was that the year before Andrew Johnson or the year after?
No, he was in the team then, but we got promoted that season. Then he got the 21 goals.
So it was the year after he got the 15 penalties or whatever he got. Yeah, okay. No, I asked because it will get dubbed that, right? London derby. But it doesn't feel like one in that sense. I think those of us who are in London feel like, oh, these London derbies can become a bit of a pain in the arse. Does it feel that way for you, Chris? You think all these London derbies? Or is it just, Tottenham's the main one for you, maybe a bit of Arsenal and Chelsea, whereas Palace doesn't feel like a derby in that sense?
No, I don't think it does in that traditional sense. Like you say, it's kind of Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal are the ones you don't normally win, but you want to win desperately. And Palace is one of those teams that seem to frustrate us. But yeah, it doesn't seem like a London derby in the traditional sense, which is kind of bizarre. Like you say, there's a few, isn't there? When you've got the likes of Fulham and those, and such like in there as well. You've got quite a few. So I guess somewhere down the line there has to be some sort of a kind of pecking order, if you like, where they seem to be there. And obviously between sort of three or four teams, we're not always in the division at the same time to have enough of a rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, you've got three in a row now: Palace away, Palace at home, Tottenham away, and then Fulham away. And for you, Rory, your biggest game ain't even a bloody London opponent, is it?
No, but you guys probably consider south of the river another country, don't you? Really, or at least another city?
Basically, yes. I to be honest, me, I consider it Arsenal territory.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So Brighton obviously would be the main one in the Premier League because Millwall, AFC Wimbledon, Charlton aren't in the Premier League. But yeah, definitely when I was growing up, it was more Charlton would be the sort of rivalry, which I guess would be, probably Arsenal's local rivals by your book, James.
But, yeah, again, correct.
Yeah, they relegated us when I was, that Andy Johnson season, they relegated us at the end of that, the 2-2 draw. And then match that didn't really matter to them. And obviously in the 90s, Wimbledon were quite good. Millwall have had they're in the Premier League for a season or two, weren't they? So they've had their sort of successes.
Not in the Premier League. I think relegated in 1990, I think, from the first division.
Maybe. So we would have played those teams more in the Championship, I guess, because West Ham probably would have been a Premier League team more often than not, so we wouldn't have come up against each other too much.
Yeah. How you feeling about the Hammers at the moment, Chris?
Mixed bag, really. It's a weird one. I should be very happy, but I guess there's a little bit of frustration just in the way that we're playing. Feel like we've got out of jail through maybe individual brilliance in a few games rather than anything else. And we seem to be playing against poorer teams, playing quite badly. And then, when it matters, okay, we're doing the business. But you think, okay, you can't keep doing that all the time. But then we'll probably play against, some, like yourselves, James, or someone else, Arsenal, sort of Christmas, New Year, and play well, but then lose the game. So I guess you have to take the results, don't you? At the end of the day, it's the results business.
I'm not looking forward to James Ward-Prowse free kicks at White Hart Lane next Thursday, mate. And like if we don't give fouls away, we beat you. But I think you might kill us on set pieces, mate.
I mean, it's more corners because he does take the majority of the free kicks, but I think he's more of there's more threat from corners than there is free kicks, if I'm honest.
It's a weird one. It's like you've gone through patches this year. So you had this brilliant start with 10 points for the first four, which obviously included beating Chelsea, Brighton. Then there were defeats to City, Liverpool, which are acceptable. And you beat Sheffield United. Then you go 4 without a win, which includes the likes of losing at home to Everton. You lost the lead at Brentford. You were well beaten in the end at Villa Park. But then you've gone back, you won the last 2, and yet you were behind in both of them in games you would expect to win against Forest and Burnley. Is it that you can't get consistency at the moment?
It's an element of that, but I think it's almost like a feeling of I know it sounds bizarre because we've had a couple of decent results, but almost like a lack of identity and what are we about? What is our way of playing? When we were doing, I suppose when we were doing well, playing quite well, Alvarez was sitting very deep, where now he seems to be getting more involved in play. Whether that's deliberate, whether that's him just bedding in, whether that's his natural game, I don't know enough about him away from obviously before he was I know he's at Ajax, but can't say I saw a lot of him in where he kind of sat in their team. But yeah, it's just, I mean, early on you had players when we were defending, there was like 3 or 4 players. You'd have Paquetá, you'd have Ward-Prowse, you'd have Alvarez, you'd have the defenders. They'd be throwing themselves in, blocking shots. But that's not really happening now. We've gone back to that kind of, when you played sort of Saturday or Sunday football more, where you run over to where the player is, but you never really got any intention of tackling them, and that's kind of what we're going through. Obviously, we're happy to give away possession, which in itself isn't a problem. I wouldn't say we're an out and out a counter-attacking team. We can be, but it's no kind of set way of playing, and there seems to be quite a lot of interchange in maybe the players' positions. So maybe they're trying to find the best way of playing with the players they've got, different systems. I don't know, but there seems to be a little bit of very minor tinkering going on. But yeah, it just seems to be, like you say, it's lack of consistency, but it's lack of consistency in the way that we play, as opposed to just the results. And I think it's the way that we're playing which is causing a lot of frustration. I think we weren't winning. I think a lot of people, or not say a lot of people, there'd be noise which gathers pace from people on the fringes who maybe on one way or the other against Moyes, which seems bizarre because we're getting good results. And I think that the fact that it's the results, I think that's what's important. But that's probably what's making the difference in terms of how fans are feeling about him. But there's still mixed opinion on him.
You said off camera before we started that statistically he's West Ham's best ever manager.
Yeah, I mean that's what I saw that today on Twitter, and it's really surprised me that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that he's up there, but I think he's got something like a 44% win ratio, which is pretty good at this level. Really, I mean, I'm guessing that probably, I don't know if that's just Premier League or if that includes all competitions. But even so, that's a good record. So I think there's something to be said for stability. But he's kind of had that.
Where do you stand on him?
I get for the last few games, it's been really frustrating with him, because he made the subs early on Saturday, but quite often he sort of makes them at the wrong time or makes them too late. A player only gets 10 minutes when maybe we need to get them on sooner. But he's getting the result, so you've got to give him his due. And he obviously the substitutions he made on Sunday made a difference in the 90th minute at least. But
what do you think about them, Rory? Do you see them as a top half team? Do you see them who perhaps like a little bit like Chris says struggle to have an identity in terms of play style?
Well, yeah, they fluctuate quite a lot, don't they? I mean, they obviously had the first 2 seasons under Moyes, they did pretty well, and they were sort of up there around the top 6. And then, playing style, I think they seem to be fairly consistent. But I think there was a whole thing in the summer, wasn't there, with Moyes and Tim Steidten, where it's like signing players, the manager not necessarily aligned with the director of football. And then I think in the end, they worked that situation out, did quite well transfer-wise, brought in quite a few players who've done well for them. So yeah, West Ham's always a team you just see them as a permanent Premier League fixture who could finish anywhere. I never really think of them going down at the start of the season, but one season they could finish, 6th. Next season could be 14th. But also last season, I think there's a case to be made that they probably had a better season, maybe even than someone like Villa, who obviously got Conference League, but they had a bad season domestically. But then in Europe, won a trophy and then got into the Europa League. So it's difficult to really kind of gauge what the success of a team is. I think winning that cup, if you hadn't won it, if you'd gone out even in the semi-finals, maybe you would have got rid of Moyes then, But because you won the competition, he obviously kept his job. And
go on, carry on, Rory. Sorry.
I'm saying there's almost when you get into that situation where the fans, because I remember we played you last season at yours. And I remember seeing a couple of things online about some of the West Ham fans going, "Well, that's got to be Moyes gone," because when you lost the 2-1 game at London Stadium, I think a few of your fans were going, "Well, that's got to be him gone then." I think when you reach that kind of stage with the fan base, it's always like a couple of bad results or a couple of poor performances. It's almost a certain section of the fan base has already lost faith and are waiting to sort of pull the trigger to a certain extent. So once you've lost certain sections, it's difficult to get them back.
It feels like that, Chris. Every time you have a bad result, it feels noisy.
Yeah, I mean,
you can hear West Ham voices. I don't mean in the ground necessarily, but on socials and stuff. I know that's not always representative of the actual fan base that are in the ground.
I think there's an element that if we had a 99% win ratio, they'd still be screaming for him because it's not 100%. So they're never going to accept him whatever he does. I think there is an element as well that people think, okay, he's done us very well, but we need to go to the next level. And I think there's a slight feeling that we should be doing better with the players that we've got. And I think it's the fact that we've got not one player, but we've got 2 or 3 or 4 players that on their day, if 1 or 2 of them perform, even for 10 or 15 minutes, that can kind of get us results. And that's probably been the difference. But I guess we have. I think it would be wrong to get rid of him. I think that would be. There'd be a bit of a car crash.
I mean, at this stage, that's nonsense talk, anyway, isn't it? Really?
Yes.
I mean, like if the club decides to change at the end of the season because it wants to go in a different direction, that feels like fair enough. But I mean, we're going into this weekend, and even if you lose to Palace, you're guaranteed to finish the weekend in the top 9. And you talk about that next level, and it's almost like, well, I don't know. If I'd said to you in pre-season you finished 9th, would you have taken it?
If we had a good cup run, if we're getting into the latter stages, like semi-finals of the Europa, or
you're still in the League Cup quarterfinals.
So exactly. So we're still in those competitions. I don't think we should get rid of him, but I can see the difficulty in some aspects and the frustration sometimes in the way that we're playing. But I think that is slightly Moyes. But I think you've got to give him credit for the results, and it's hard. It's a hard watch sometimes, but at the end of the day, 2 days later, you remembering the result, or you remembering the performance, and you probably remember the result more overall.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the manner of the 2 victories in a weird way leaves a positive feeling because you've won both games from behind and quite late on, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's that we seem to have, rather than relying on one player, which we seem to have done in the last few seasons, and then collectively you're hoping that everyone does okay. I think we've got 2 or 3, so we're not reliant on one. And we've brought in some players that have definitely improved the team. Kudus, Ward-Prowse, obviously Paqueta's stepped up, and then obviously Bowen's kind of gone back to scoring again. So yeah, I think there's that aspect. But I think with those attacking players that we've got and the quality that we've got, there's a feeling that we should be doing even better. But I'm not convinced that with the board that we've got would even appoint the sort of manager, like we wouldn't appoint Eddie Howe, or we wouldn't have gone and got your manager, for example. They'd go for
Roy Hodgson, or are you talking to me?
No, sorry. They might have gone for Roy Hodgson actually, because he's probably seen as a safe bet. They like someone who's kind of, but almost by doing the safe bet, there's no such thing, is there? And you're not gonna get this progressive approach, which is what every sort of club seems to want. And they want this miracle kind of manager to come in and totally transform things, which is a bit sort of pie in the sky, really, at times for every day.
There's a couple of things there, Rory, that I want to touch on that Chris mentioned. One is the safe bet.
Yeah.
Is that what you did?
Went with Roy.
Yeah.
To some extent, but there's always a kind of question. I mean, who else was available? I think if you'd said, so Roy came in, when was it? Was it April? It was maybe a bit before April, maybe March. If you'd have said at that point, you go and get someone like Vincent Kompany, who's doing really well in the Championship at that point, I would have been like, brilliant. But then you look at the way that's gone for them so far this season. Obviously, they lost a few players because they're all on loan and stuff like that. But that's not necessarily gone so well. I don't know what the alternative is. Actually, funnily enough, James, in May last season, I was saying, let's get Ange, which sounds ridiculous now because he's done so well at Tottenham. But when he was just at Celtic, getting someone from that league, it's always possible that he would take a kind of sideways move just to get into the Premier League or something like that. Roy is a kind of safe pair of hands, but equally, the way they've managed the club means that it's very difficult for him because all of the depth we have, especially in attacking areas, which now, our injuries have sort of moved forward from the defence to the attacking third of the pitch now, which is a little bit more difficult for us because we struggle to create anything anyway. But all the depth we have in those positions are young players, and he doesn't play young players. So he's a safe pair of hands in terms of, a lot of people think you'd never go down with Roy Hodgson. But when the squad is run in a certain way where they're trying to cut costs, I guess, by having depth in young players, Jezrin Raksaki being a League One player last year and coming straight up and being the depth on the wings, both wings apparently. If he's not going to play those players, then it's a lot more risky to have a younger squad, and he just refuses to play under anyone under the age of 25 if they haven't already got 100 Premier League appearances.
He said after my team played you, he said that the kids came on and didn't do anything. What did you make of those comments?
Yeah, it's disappointing because there's, the identity of the football club. I mean, you hear this argument between fans of kind of bigger clubs than us where it's like, oh, we play good football, oh, we win things. And it's like, ideally, everyone wants to do both. But, the identity of, say, I don't know, let's say Arsenal, who play very good football, if they bring in a manager like Mourinho or something, they'd be like, this is completely against the identity of the club, even if they won things, something like that. Our identity isn't winning anything, and it's not playing good football. So our identity is bringing through young players. That's our history. That's kind of the identity of our football club. So when you say things against that, I think that might have been a jab at the board, maybe in terms of what I was just talking about, with all the depth coming in youth rather than coming in sort of experienced players. I think it may have been a little bit of a pomp more directly at França, who came on in that game, gave the ball away a couple of times, and then put in 4 or 5 corners, which were quite poor. But he showed some good touches as well in that game. I don't know. I think that was probably quite a frustrating experience, that Tottenham game, because obviously we conceded 1 shot on target, scored an own goal, and then lost the game 2-1. So that was probably, words in frustration. But he is that kind of manager, a bit like Moyes. He's never going to play the young players. He's never going to be like, great, we've signed this 19-year-old from Holland. Great.
I suppose the club weren't going to, with respect, when you chose to give him the job again full time, it's not a 10-year project, is it? So does the club want to go and spend a certain amount of money based on what Roy Hodgson wants when there might be another appointment next year and it wants something very different?
Well, yeah, you say that. I mean, one of our owners, Texter, he actually owns the company that made Tupac's hologram. So there could be, he could be there in 50 years and he'd just be a hologram on us. But yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the case. I think they looked at what it actually occurred to me. You said in Correspondents Week, maybe it's to do with FFP. That recruitment under Vieira was within the 3-year period for FFP. And then we hadn't sold anyone. We lost those 10, 11 first team players who went out before that spending on a free. We lost Zaha on a free. We haven't really made money on anyone since Wan-Bissaka. So I suppose from that side of things, it could just be we just need 1-year holding pattern to get us over to next summer. Makes a lot of sense from that respect. But if you're bringing in the guy who's supposed to beat the newly promoted teams and then you lose it away at Luton, in whatever circumstances, that's it's not ideal for the whole reason for him being there, just to keep you safe for a season.
No, and it's interesting when you reflect on it though. Would Palace fans have rather spent 100 million in the summer and lost, say, Elise to Chelsea, or got him an Eze on the new contract and kept Gay and Anderson? Maybe that was the club's priority, to keep 4 key players, knowing that it was obviously powerless in the Wilfried Zaha situation.
Yeah. The Zaha one, I think he scuppered plans quite a bit because obviously he sort of flirted with signing a new contract, was doing rehab at the club from his hamstring injury, and then left quite late on in the transfer window. So whatever plans they may have had might have been, delayed quite a lot, and you can miss out on players with delays. Yeah, I think keeping those players is obviously a priority. However, we know now from the way a lot of intelligent independently run clubs are run, losing those players isn't necessarily the end of the world, because we don't really spend money, right? We haven't spent money in a long time, but whenever we have, we've done a good job with it. I think over the last couple of years, spending money has actually gone well. And the whole point of buying players like, say, Chris Richards is that when Gehi goes, we've already got the replacement there, so we can spend the money on losing Wilfred Zaha. You sign a left winger to replace Zaha, or you sign a striker, and by all accounts, they're in for Ekitike along with Chris's team. I think there are certain issues with the approach of we're just going to keep everyone here, because then when you do try and sign someone who's up and coming, who's maybe 19, 20, 21, they might look at it and go, well, if I sign this contract, I'm sort of handcuffed to this club for 10 years because you're not going to sell me. Whereas you can make the case, if you sell on a player, then you're signing that next young talent. You can say to them, look, we'll give you that leg up to being a Champions League, Europa League player. So
who was manager when you bought Eze?
Vieira. Well, we didn't actually have one. He came in afterwards, but apparently Vieira was pivotal in getting him in.
So he wasn't a Roy Hodgson signing?
No. Eze was.
Obviously, sorry, that's what I said, Eze. So Eze was Roy Hodgson.
Oh, right. I thought you said Elisa. Yeah, Eze was.
Sorry.
Yeah, he came in, under Roy.
Okay. So he can invest in youth if the talent's there, and he's brought him through and forward, right?
Yeah, I mean, he came straight into the team as well, Eze, because he's, undeniable talent, I guess. So, yeah, he can do that. He can bring through young players, but, he'll always play Schlupperneu ahead.
Yeah, the other thing Chris mentioned was next level. Does that exist for Crystal Palace, and what does it look like?
Well, I think it's that strategy that I was talking about earlier, bringing through those players and then selling them on. I think that's what you have to do to move to the next level. We are realistically at our ceiling in terms of our resources. So, yeah, we can't compete. I mean, I was thinking this last season, obviously, Villa, Brighton and Newcastle's maybe a little bit different thing, had a really good season. But at the same time, that relied on Chelsea having a bad season, Tottenham having a bad season, and Liverpool to some extent having a bad season, except for the last sort of 10 games. So what is our ceiling? Well, it kind of depends on the league that year. I mean, even when Leicester won the league, everyone had a bad season, didn't they? Apart from like they snuck in through the back door to some extent, had a great season, not taking that away from them. But it's very dependent on what the league looks like. We could have our best season in the last 10 years, but if everyone in the big six has a good season, we'll probably finish 8th or 9th.
That would be the next level, wouldn't it?
Well, you're going to have much
to be
more
close to it, to be in a position where you're getting April, May, and we're going Palace qualify for Europe. That is the next step, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it would certainly make the new year more enjoyable if we're capable of doing that. So often, usually it's like the end of February, it's the end of the season. But yeah, that is the next step, just to enjoy football more. But at the end of the day, or you have the kind of memories from it to some extent. Like the next step, I think, is converting what you've achieved so far into the thing that people use, all the analytics people, what's your ceiling, what's your floor, raise your floor to the next level. Well, if we do build this new stand, that's not anything anyone can point to and go, I remember that day when we did this, but it's something that raises your floor as a football club. I think when I was on with Sai from Newcastle, he was saying, like, when I was talking about our ownership, it reminded him a bit of Mike Ashley. And I was like, well, if we're run badly and no one puts any money into us, we'll be a League One club, whereas Newcastle have a floor. So you've got to try and raise the foundation of the football club a little bit before you can think about going, we'll have a punt and spend 200 million in a window,
Before you build that new stand, can you do something with the alpha weight, please, mate?
They can't raise the roof of that one. But if they do the new stand, then they can move the gantry out and you might actually be able to see something more than people's feet whenever there's a goal kick.
Yeah, but I'd like something that's got a little bit of steepness.
Yeah, but that just means there'll be like 2 people in the stand. Because they can't raise the roof and it's really low roof. So they've made it as flat as possible so they can get as many people in there, I guess.
Yeah, I know what they've done, mate. It's not great. Let's talk some injuries because you've both got issues at the moment. We should caveat this by saying we're pre-recording this on Tuesday morning. Chris, Jarrod Bowen, what do we know at this stage? The word seems to be he was very close for Burnley. Is that the case as far as you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Moyes I think he said the other day. He said he was basically very close. I've heard he was 50-50 apparently. He won't play on Thursday, but I don't know if that means if he won't travel.
He won't play, or is that because the game doesn't matter? Is that your view on it? Such seems to think he might if he was fit.
I wouldn't stake my life on it, but I'm sure that Moyes had said that he's unlikely to play on Thursday, and they would hope that he'd be ready for Palace. It's one of those injuries because it's fluid on the knee. where they say it's sort of 1 to 3 weeks usually with these things, so it could drag on maybe a week or two. But he's not one of those sort of players which tends to be out for a long time. He's a bit like Saka in that sense, doesn't he? He tends to play most of the time, so it's a little bit in the balance. It's a bit of a tricky one, but it's not foreseen that he's going to be out. Nothing's come out to say that he's going to be out for a long time. So if he didn't make Palace, I'd expect him to play against the Spurs.
Oh, I'm sure he'll play at White Hart Lane next Thursday. That's almost a certainty. Is he in your FPL team at the moment, Chris?
He is, yes. So I've actually got 3. I've got him, Areola, and Ward-Prowse. But
nice.
But yeah, Ward-Prowse is a bit. His position's changed a little bit. He's gone back slightly, and obviously Soucek's gone up slightly. So I think Ward-Prowse is now almost solely reliant on corners and free kicks, set pieces, to get any returns. And to be fair, every game there's 2 or 3 or more good chances that someone has from these. So he's definitely a threat, but I think his appeal's slightly waning because there's other players around FPL wise.
I get that. What are you thinking with Bowen?
I
guess it's dependent on the news, but have you considered, if he's out for 3 weeks, what your ideas are? Or
if I didn't have value in him, I'd probably sell him straight away. But it's one of them that I probably want him back. I'd say if Kudus wasn't going to the African nations, then that would be a reasonable swap. A very minor downgrade. I know that sounds funny, but at the moment, Kudus,
there's a lot of people wildcarding sort of 19 now and only looking short term. So I mean, that's perfectly reasonable, isn't it?
Yeah. For a short period up until that, then Kudus would be fine. You'd be okay there. And obviously, you've got Soucek at 4.9, which I know you and Stitch were talking about the other day. He's getting there. He's getting his 2 or 3 chances. I had a quick look actually. It's on SofaScore, so sometimes I know these stats aren't ultra reliable, but it was his shots per game. So it's pretty much the same as what it was when he was. It's not far off being what it was when he had that season, his sort of first full season where he got 10 goals.
Yeah, I think for most people, it becomes if he's out for the weekend and then it's Tottenham away next, that might be enough for people to think, I want to move that on. It's particularly for those who are on wildcard soon, thinking, right, well, I need to make the gains quickly here. It's worth saying though, for those who've used it, I mean, as an overview, looking at your fixtures basically till end of March, basically the March international break, it's pretty good all the way through. I know you got to play Arsenal twice during that period, and you come to a depleted Tottenham next week. But otherwise, till the end of March, it's a good run.
Yeah,
there's definitely a case to say you could have him through all of it.
I mean, unless they come out and said, "Look, this is worse than we thought," I'd probably hold. I'd hold 5. You've got a sub if you can. The trouble is because he's in that 7, or sort of he's in there about 7.5, 7.6. Might be a bit more than that. Mightn't he? He's in that sort of that 7 range, isn't he? Mid to high 7 range. It's a little bit more expensive to kind of just leave him on your bench. If he was, not that he would be, but if he was like, you've got a Soucek or someone even at 6 million, you can afford to do it for a little bit longer. But you don't really want to play like that, not playing in your FPL team. But I wouldn't be too quick to jump ship this week. Like you say, you've got you next week, where you're a little bit depleted, and he will score against good teams.
Jarrod Bowen could have fun against my team next week. Yeah, I mean, Romero will be back, but even still, he could have some fun next week against my team. Have you got at the moment, Rory?
I just sold him because the injury. I went across to Bumo because I would have done that this week anyway. So I was just like, I'll bring that forward.
Yeah. And that's one's going to be a really popular move, Chris. For anyone who doesn't have that, looking at Brentford at home to Luton, if there's a doubt about him, people make that move, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at bringing in Bumo, but I'll probably lose Ward-Prowse. I wanted him for this week. I know it's a little bit of a risk, but I think longer term, he offers a bit more than Ward-Prowse. I think Ward-Prowse, he was getting forwards. He's not getting forwards as much or not getting as far forwards, I should say, as he was in the first few games when he got a couple of goals. And
so you would say Ward-Prowse is expendable, I guess.
I'd say so, yeah. And I think he's don't get me wrong, he's playing very well. He's not, but I think in FPL terms, I think he's expendable.
What about Soucek, Chris?
That's what I say. I think he's a good alternative, especially for someone like Palmer or someone, because I don't think his role is going to change. He's going to still be playing over Christmas and New Year. So he gets, when the last two games when we've been behind, he's been pushed, extremely far forwards. So he's kind of he's had 2 or 3 chances. He had a very good chance against Forest, but that's happening nearly every game. He's getting 2 or 3 chances, a couple of between 1 and 2 shots on goal each game, shots or headers. So I think at his price, I think he's a good one, because if there's a drop in form or something, you can just leave him there. You've not tied up money. So I think he's a pretty good alternative. They're all pretty close actually on sort of form and points. Kudus is the form player at the moment, but yeah, he's above. I think he's above Ward-Prowse in terms of FPL form at the moment. So he's only scored 3 so far. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets close to 10 again this season. Soucek.
And Kudus, Chris, is that defined now as in the right side forward position is now going to be his, with Bowen staying through the middle? Is that what we expect going forward once Bowen's fit?
I'd say so. I mean, there's talk of us signing a forward, but that's never easy. But I'd say that probably is his best position. He's playing well there. He covers as well defensively. But obviously, short term that's fine, but then bear in mind, if you've used your wild card or something, you're booking a transfer into January because of the African nations.
If Bowen was passed clear and fit for the weekend, and you knew he was going to start against Palace, and someone went to buy as new, would you pay the extra for Bowen over Kudus, or would you consider making a saving at this stage?
It's a tough one. It's always a risk, because you're buying a player that's got an injury which you don't know about, and then whenever it's a knee, I know it's only fluid, but you always worry, could it develop into something else? It's a really tough call. If I'm honest, if you're looking and you're using a wild card, I'd probably go with Kudus, just because of the slight overhang of the injury. But I would say Bowen's probably got the potential to outscore Kudus.
Yeah, it always feels a talismanic nature about Bowen, and it's not to say Kudus can't have that. I think he can. I think he's a really good bet at his price at the moment. I think if they were the same price and I knew Bowen was fit, I definitely would be buying Bowen. But for the million difference, I think there is an interesting debate to have there. And for those of us sitting there with, say, Bowen and Bumo, if Bowen's ruled out, I guess Kudus will be near the top of the list of what people will be considering. I guess Ebe Eze would have been as well, maybe, Rory. But what we're saying, probably December out, is that how it looks at the moment?
Yeah, he might make the Chelsea game, I think. Possibly, optimistically. So it's 3 weeks from the weekend, 3 or 4 weeks. So he can make the Chelsea game. Outside shot the Brighton game seems unlikely. So
how big of I'd be stating the obvious, but how big of a blow is that?
Yeah, it's huge in terms of actually, doing anything in the attacking third whatsoever. I mean, Elise obviously picked up the ball in the halfway line and then just carried the ball into the box somehow, beat the same man twice, and then
somehow only got the second best goal at the weekend.
Yeah, well, according to certain media sources, I personally think it's a bit better than the bicycle kick, but
Bring your bias, Rory. Bring your bias.
Well, it's my bias against the MSM. By that I mean the Manchester Simp media that we usually consume. But yeah, I think Elise will do some of the useful things. I think going into these games we've got coming up, the next 2 are okay. I think they're part of the 5 that we were sort of targeting, I guess, as a run. The following games, maybe it's better not to be so open. And if he plays Hughes and Schlupp and then plays A off the left, Elise off the right, probably out wide through the middle. I mean, it's not got much cutting edge, has it? But equally, that centre of midfield is probably fairly difficult for teams to break down, I think. So we probably would have done something like that against City and Liverpool anyway, to be honest. Not that we'd have dropped Eze, but we'd have played very...
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, though. In a roundabouts way, you are better off losing him for a period where you've got really tough fixtures coming up, rather than if you had 3 or 4 games at home that you'd expect to win them all. I think that's probably what you're trying to get at. Would Elise be a consideration for those who... Because certainly if you would have gambled Eze at the weekend, was it just moved down to Elise? Is that an option for you? Or is it because this run's getting tougher, it's better to stay away?
Yeah, I wouldn't buy any Palace now, offensive or defensive, until game week 26 that the fixtures actually start to get good again for us. So I think I probably wouldn't look to move to Palace. If you're sat there with defensive assets, it might be okay. And Elise's obviously got that in his locker. You know, the game against Man United at home last season with the free kick, hit the underside of the crossbar. He didn't do anything all game, and then just one moment of brilliance. And obviously what he did at the weekend is something, I'm not saying that's repeatable against, left backs who are Champions League quality or something like that, but what he's done there, he's got that flash of brilliance that he could do it at any point in any game. But I wouldn't necessarily be buying Palace assets now until the new year, possibly beyond.
And the news, obviously, on Eze is bad. It's probably not the worst Palace news of the week, though, I'm guessing, Rory.
No, so Doucoure's out probably for the season, and he's missed 2 games before. Luton was 0-0 when he went off. He missed the Newcastle game, we lost 4-0, and the Everton game, we lost 3-2. So that's 7 goals in 2 games without him in the team. So it really does affect the solidity.
Or 9 in 2 1/3, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I was thinking about this earlier with those players on the pitch when Chris was talking about they've been fairly average in performance, but then someone's pulled something out of the bag. We're kind of the opposite at the moment, where performances are okay, they're kind of average, but then some absolute terrible defensive errors like the Anderson one against Luton, where those mistakes kind of doesn't matter how well you play in the rest of the game if someone does that. So
yeah, it's an unusual bit of indecisiveness from him because he's a good defender.
Yeah, I mean, not if you ask Leon fans. I think before he went to Fulham, Leon was sort of writing him off as someone who just regularly, does stuff like that. So he has got that in his locker. He also just came off a midweek game where they lost 2-0 to Northern Ireland. So he's not had a great week himself. But yeah, he has been good for us. But there have been quite a few instances recently where I don't know what it is, whether it's sort of mental fatigue or something, but people are just making stupid errors. So buying Palace assets, even in games that look good, I think I'd warn people off at the moment.
I mean, Anderson's obviously shot up in value massively since the start of the season, currently at 5.2 at the time of recording. It's going to be people who are up, I don't know, 0.6, 7, whatever on him. Is this now the time to consider selling then?
Yeah, I would do. I think so. I mean, maybe... No, the next 2, I think... Bournemouth will create chances against us, and West Ham, maybe away from home. So yeah, I'd probably sell him, to be honest. Now,
because the number will have just bought, right? Last week, going into game week 13, there was a lot of people, defensive assets look terrible this week. And the more you looked at Palace at Luton, you kept thinking could be. It's just people have just bought the likes of, perhaps not Anderson at that value, but Gay, Mitchell. Should those people already be looking to flip that back somewhere else then?
If you need someone to play, I mean, those players aren't going to get rotated or dropped or anything. So if you're there with like a Tsimikas or a Gabriel or even a Matty Cash now, maybe it's worth keeping them because, you've got other issues to solve. If your team looks strong enough, you could probably look to get rid of them. Otherwise, holding them for the next 2, maybe not the worst thing in the world. But, then the run up until the new year is a bit rough. So it's not necessarily the priority for some people. It depends how your team is set up. But I think if you've got the transfer to make, I would advise losing them.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a few fixtures that repeat in January as well, such as the Brighton game. You've got Chelsea, obviously, in December and January. And before those 2, Liverpool and Man City away looks quite ugly. You've also got a trip to Arsenal in a split game week of game week 21 as well. I don't know how often you'd be starting these players over that forthcoming period. Even next midweek, you look at things like, Arsenal go to Luton, Liverpool go to Sheffield United, Newcastle go to Everton, Tottenham have got West Ham at home, with respect, Chris. There's an argument to say, even with that Bournemouth at home fixture, the likes of Gay wouldn't be automatic starters in subject to what people have got.
Yeah, so I think 26 was the time when I was looking at as possibly when you can get Palace back in, because I think it's the Burnley game, maybe even the week before with Everton. But until then, it's probably, if you've got, try and shift.
What does Doucoure bring to the team that's going to be such a miss?
So he's, I think if you do it per 90, since he joined, he's fourth best in the league for tackles per 90 and top in interceptions per 90 or something like that. I was reading an Athletic article about that earlier. So yeah, he's one of those players. Liverpool were obviously allegedly in for him in the summer. He is sort of, he is good on the ball. Like, he's a very good player on the ball. For us, maybe one of those teams, if he played for like a Europa League or a Champions League team, he would be essentially winning the ball back and giving it to someone better than him. But he gives us so much control there in the holding midfield. Any extended spell of possession we have, he's very key to that, and he does win the ball back very well. And more so than Lerma and Hughes, he actually moves the ball forward as well, which is an issue when you've got our fullbacks.
It felt like you spent the majority of last season trying to work out a good partner for him.
Yeah.
And Lerma has obviously become it, I think. It's a good balance between the two of them. Now, it feels like you might spend a lot of this season trying to find a good partner for Lerma.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways it could go. I think Hughes will probably get the shirt. I think in terms of balance, it's possible. With Eze out, it'll be Hughes and Schlupp in there. And in terms of balance, that might work because Hughes also likes to win back the ball quite a lot, and Schlupp can carry the ball quite well. But we might end up in a similar situation where, we're playing Schlupp and Eze in central midfield 3 with Lerma instead of Doucoure. And Lerma's a good player, but he's not. I don't think he's as good on the ball as Doucoure is. So,
Are you on any Palace players at the moment?
Nope, haven't been
Chris?
for.
No. I mean, I was looking at Elise when he came back, but I think Palace have got that problem. I think with Eze and Elise playing, I think they're both good options. But I think I think you might have spoken about it as well, James, but when Eze sort of started the season and he was on his own, it's easier for teams to kind of mark when you've only got, and it's similar to the problem that we had last season, when you've only got one player that is that player who, that your team's everything's going to go through.
The two players have both got so much individual quality.
Yes.
That they can obviously do it themselves, as shown by Elise's goal. You think of Eze's run for the penalty against Everton. But having a wingman, if you will, and in Eze's case, that's a literal, certainly helps. Perhaps Elise might find it a little bit easier because he's not in the centre of the pitch so much. And it's very much you can find him out wide and it's up to him and he can see the picture of the game all the time. Might be a little bit easier, but I agree. And the moment to come or to buy has certainly gone, which means the only one here on this podcast who's got a Crystal Palace player at the moment is me.
Yep.
But I'm thinking of selling him as well, Rory. I'm obviously referring to your goalkeeper, who's done great for me, Sam Johnstone, 51 FPL points in the 13 game weeks played so far. At the time of recording, I'm eyeing that Kelleher move. It feels like with your problems now and that me wildcard 19, it might just be a short-term subject to what the prognosis is on Alisson. But I am also awareness. You know what I keep looking at, Rory? I keep thinking Sanchez is probably the goalkeeper for me on wildcard.
Yeah.
And the 1 week Chelsea have a bad fixture, you've got Sheffield United at home.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past us to randomly throw one in that week as well. But yeah.
Thank you, mate. Right, that'll do. Let's get rid of
it. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. Defense is obviously anything we do is going to be based on defense. So
it's worth saying I was thinking of moving him to Sanchez in 16 was very much on the agenda for me anyway. It's just a flip of fixtures from Palace to Chelsea. And I think those who have, by the way, sort of likes of Gay, Mitchell are probably going to look at that sort of thing. Palace to Chelsea in 16, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I guess the only issue with Chelsea defense, apart from Sanchez,
Which
if you're
one?
doing a defender, who's going to play? I mean, I think you could say over the next few weeks he might make a good amount of save points, and if we do keep a clean sheet in any of those games, he'll probably get 3 bonus. Is the only thing. So I mean, that's potentially something to consider. But yeah, I wouldn't advise anyone buying any Palace assets, attacking or defensive, over the next sort of 6 weeks.
I presume anyone has gone odds on Edouard, because I do get that question once every couple of weeks. That's a get rid as well, is it, at this stage?
Yeah, he had the goal correctly disallowed against Luton. He he's a frustrating player from a Palace fan perspective because he doesn't do anything outside the box really, unless he's being the sort of second striker to someone else. But I was considering, because Eze and Elise are back, I thought he was actually possibly the asset to get, because those two are kind of assist merchants. So like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I would have maybe said, I'll go for Edouard, who he might pick up a few. But yeah, team's not going to create too many chances, so he probably won't have too many chances to score.
Okay. Chris, a lot of FPL managers have had enough of your goalkeeper. It was all clever dicks at the moment. You told everyone he'd start the season at 4.0, but then didn't start with him yourself. A lot have been on. A lot of like, am I ever getting a clean sheet again? What can you tell him, Chris?
It's not down to Areola, but at the end of the day, it's the defence which helps with those clean sheets, and we just make too many mistakes. We're not defending well enough, and I don't think the midfield's providing enough of a shield to stop chances. We make a mistake. You know, like Saturday we gave away a stupid penalty. There'd be something that happens where it shouldn't have been a goal. But Areola, as an individual player, has been absolutely brilliant. But FPL wise, yeah, I couldn't tell you when we're going to get a clean sheet.
Your fixtures look too good to move him.
They do, but then, you know, like Saturday was a case in point. Something will happen in the game, an individual error or a decision or something, whether it's right or wrong decision. But obviously, the penalty was a penalty on Saturday. No dispute on that. That's what will happen. That's just how we are. We're not tight enough to. We're not. You couldn't say we've been unlucky to concede some of the goals. For that reason,
that's a fair thing to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for that reason. I think, like you say, with the Keller situation, if he's available, then you're going to play your Liverpool player, aren't you? If he becomes an option.
Yeah, but I think for those, chances are most people who've used the wild card probably went with him.
Yeah,
and when you're looking at that period of exactly what I'm saying, like up until March, you know, FA Cup quarterfinal and blanks and stuff, as a whole, that's fine. You know, you can look at things. Oh, well, Arsenal win 19. Well, yeah, Keller's probably playing Arsenal in 18 instead. So, like, how much better is it? And that's a short term, but it's going to become a problem longer term. That's why I keep referencing it might be one for those who've still got the wild card in their pocket. If I'd used it, I think I'd just be suffering this with Areola. And I think the clean sheets might come at times I don't expect it, like maybe at Tottenham next week, for example.
Yeah, but that's us all over. That's always been our problem. But I think we've had one clean sheet. I think statistically, you think sooner or later, but then, like I say, I really don't know where it's going to come from. There's nothing to indicate that we're going to get a clean sheet. But I mean, like myself, I've got Areola and Turner, so yeah, it's a huge transfer. But I could potentially take out Turner and then bring in Keller if Keller was an option.
Yeah, I mean, that's, of course, is an option. Yeah, you use the other goalkeeper to get something like Keller, and then you, obviously, in that scenario, if he's in goal at Sheffield United, you'd bench Areola at Tottenham, for example. Yeah, you could do it that way, maybe.
But yeah, I wouldn't go out and buy him, put it that way. If not that anyone would go and buy Areola now, but just because
he's got 11 points in his last 6.
Yeah, he's kept us in games. He's definitely kept us in games, and they're saves which you look at, and they're absolutely brilliant saves. So it's not like he's just doing his job. He's doing more than his job. But it's the rest of them in our defences, performance-wise, in terms of keeping clean sheets, is a no-go at the moment.
Okay. Before we finish up, if Bowen was ruled out for a few weeks, what do you think the prospects are of Mobama getting serious minutes?
He should get more minutes, but I don't think Antonio's injury is apparently as bad as what they were saying as well. So it's really difficult because Moyes is talking him down. He's not talking him up. He's saying, he will get minutes, but he's 19. He's still learning. So it's very high risk. He's cheap. But
he's 4.3, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could, but then, are you? I know it sounds a stupid thing to say because not many people are going to have 3 West Ham players. But if you've got Areola, for example, and you've got Bowen, then that's your
Yeah, I get it. You're cutting off Kudus, for example, if you do decide you want to go that way. I get that. Yeah,
so that's a difficult one.
It is a good point, actually, that you might be cutting yourself off of something else that you maybe want. Again, I think it might be one for those who want to find the money who've still got the wild card in their pocket. But I mean, you could definitely use him as the 8th attacker. I mean, it's 4.3 million forward.
Yeah.
Who I guess is, I don't know, at kind of same level as Ings maybe now. I mean, Suj keeps saying West Ham fans would pick him over Ings.
I think anyone would, because Ings has got no value to us in terms of he doesn't, and it's not being disrespectful to Ings, but he can't play in that position in the way that we want a forward to be there for. When we play a forward, they're up there on their own. They've got to work and they've got to toil. Ings can't do that. He can't do that. He needs someone around him as well. When he's so yeah. I mean, on paper, he should be starting it, but there's all sorts of things going on with him. So I think he will get minutes, but if it's to save money, then nothing against it. I wouldn't pick him thinking he's going to.
No, but I suppose if there was a setback for Bowen and suddenly we heard, look, he's going to miss December, then suddenly he becomes of real interest, doesn't he? And you could stick him in, you could bench him, and if suddenly he breaks into the team with some half-decent fixtures, you'd go, sure, maybe you might look at it. It's a sort of one that will facilitate people having all the players they want, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he could get 60 minutes, he could get 30 minutes, but he's capable.
Okay, interesting. One final question we'll ask you both. You both played Everton recently and both lost at home as well. Chris, do you think they'll stay up?
I think they will. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible for Burnley, but they're below them and Everton have had 10 points deducted. So I think they will struggle, but I think they would just about stay up because of the other teams being how they are. The other teams are going to have to do something miraculous, and I don't know which of them would do it. I would guess Sheffield United out of the three would be the most likely, given that they've got some out of Luton and Burnley. I just can't. The trouble with Burnley is they're capable of scoring, but unless they tighten up, unless they change something, they're going to concede. They're going to concede goals. I think they were saying on Saturday they concede an average of almost 3 goals a game.
They can't sort that out. You've obviously just played Luton as well, Rory. Do you feel different about that?
Yeah, I mean, I disagree a little bit with Chris. Looking at it, I think Sheffield United for me are pretty much down. Burnley, it's a question. They've got some good players. I mean, you guys just played them. I think Suj said he thought Amdouni looked good as well, and I thought that as well. They do have a couple of good players in there, but I don't really see it with them in terms of the solidity. So those two, I think, will probably struggle. They'll definitely be in the bottom 4, and they'll probably both go down. No offense to fans of those clubs. So then Luton looked okay. They'll have to win 6 or 7 home games to stay up, though, which is always difficult to do. But against you, for example, Chris, they should have had a penalty and they didn't get it, and that would have been a point at home when they did play you. So I think they've been okay. So then you think Luton, Bournemouth have started playing well. They had the Newcastle game which they won, and then they won again at the weekend. Okay, Sheffield United, but they look like things are maybe starting to click there, and they'll get more of the injuries back and so on. So it's really a question of that, and then there's potential for another team to get dragged into it. Could be us with the injuries and the lack of depth. And well, if we don't win either of the next 2, we won't win either of the 4 after that. So then we'll have lost 8 in a row.
Is there a danger of that? Is that in Palace's fans' minds? And actually, the run is not as bad as it was that you had January to March last year. But is there an awareness of that? Like, oh God, we did go 3 months without a win last year.
Yeah, but then it's an idea of. We did have that run last season, yeah, of course we did, and we could not win now for 8 games if we don't win one of the next 2, which I just said Bournemouth coming into form, West Ham obviously away from home, tricky match for us. But we've got 4 wins, and people are saying like 30, low 30s could be enough. I'm not sure if I do fully agree with that, because people often say that. People often say, oh, you'll only need 32, 33 this season. We're sort of halfway there already, aren't we, with the 4 wins we got in the first 7 or something like that. But there is a worry. I mean, some of the people are saying maybe get rid of Roy. But then I was listening to the other clash of the correspondents, the Everton one, obviously, but also the Forest one. And they were saying, well, if we lose the next 2, we might get rid of Cooper. And I saw his odds went down this morning from 20 to 72 or something like that. So that's crashed quite quickly. Maybe on the base of the clash of correspondents, maybe it's shifting the market.
You see, Mark Summers is controlling what Marinakis is doing at that Nottingham Forest.
Well, it's that smaller market. I'd imagine someone puts 25 pence on it and it probably shifts it quite a bit. But so there is a danger. There is a sort of question mark over we could potentially get dragged in with the injuries. Doucoure being out, and are we going to spend money in January? We haven't historically, so that is theoretically possible. If we did continue to have more injuries, that is a worry. But I think everyone else sort of sees us as a safe Premier League club, but results determine things. So if we didn't win any of the next 6, people would be saying, "Oh, Palace, they might get dragged into it."
I mean, you'd be fine, mate. You'd be absolutely fine. In a weird way, I'd probably become more concerned if suddenly you lost the centre backs for whatever reason. I'd then become concerned because I feel like you have that ability, like the win at Old Trafford, to dig them ones out when you need to. But
we've got depth at centre half is the difference. Like if Lerma went out now, if Lerma got suspended for 3 games or something, it's a bit more, who's actually there. We probably have to play Chris Richards in central midfield or something.
Interesting. Thank you both, gents. Really enjoyed that. Let's have some predictions before we finish then. Chris.
I'm going to go for 2-1 West Ham. I think Palace have got a few key players out, so I'm hoping that we can actually take advantage of that.
Okay. Rory?
Desmond, I think.
Desmond 2-2. So even with Eze, without Eze, 2 goals scored.
Yeah, I don't think the defence has been fantastic recently. And I think, that's been a kind of historical result we've had in this fixture a little bit. I think 2-2 happened a few times.
Yeah, I think I give you the home advantage here, Chris. 2-1. I don't really trust you to keep a clean sheet at the moment, to be very honest. But I think with home advantage, I'd give you the edge. I mean, it'd be interesting to see, Rory, how the team reacts to the loss of Doucoure. Because I think people within the club know how important that is, but people on the outside might not realise. So it'd be interesting to see how you set up on Sunday afternoon. Good luck to you both, you gents. Thank you both so much. I will be streaming tomorrow on Friday with Ask James. There's another 2 Clash of the Correspondents for you next week as well. On Tuesday, ahead of the game week 15 deadline, Aston Villa versus Manchester City with Lee Jackson and Johnny Pringle. And next Wednesday, an unusual day for COTC, but next Wednesday, ahead of game week 16, Manchester United versus Bournemouth with Gary Robinson and Neil Grover. Just leaves me to say thanks again so much to Chris and to Rory. Good luck, gents. Cue music, please, man child.